Hey, it's Catherine with New England Surrogacy. Nice to see you today. It is an absolute gorgeous day here in Concord, New Hampshire. Gorgeous. I wish I could be outside all day, but can't. So I wanted to follow up with you guys because we actually have a question that relates to our video earlier in the week where I talked about the New Hampshire infertility insurance bill. And so today's question is as a follow-up to that, which is that, I'm trying to understand how the infertility insurance bill relates to surrogacy. I've heard that surrogacy was excluded from the bill. Is that correct? And if that's not correct, does this mean that we don't need to have an insurance policy review anymore? Okay, so a couple questions there. So I'm going to back up and talk about this bill a little bit. What this bill does is it talks about the making and using of the embryos. So it's focused solely on the IVF process. It is not focused on the being pregnant, getting maternity care, delivering the baby, recovering from childbirth. None of that process. That was never intended to be part of the bill because it's not part of the making and using of embryos. It's the maternity care, the being pregnant and staying healthy while you're pregnant and during your delivery. So that piece is not part of this bill. So what that means is that you're going to still need to do your insurance reviews, be it with Art Risk or New Life or whatever agency you're using. Insurance reviews for maternity care are just as important as they always have been. Now, with regards to the making and using of the embryos, we kind of break that down into three separate pieces. One is getting the eggs and sperm. Two is mixing the eggs and sperm together, making your embryos, letting them grow in the lab for a few days. And three is putting these embryos into a uterus. And with the surrogacy case, of course, the embryos are going to go into the gestational surrogate's uterus. So we, wanted to make this bill as comprehensive as possible. We started off with covering all three of those parts for anybody undergoing surrogacy. Now, unfortunately, the insurance companies had some concerns, and I think valid concerns about how they were going to manage this whole transferring an embryo into the uterus of someone who is not on the insurance policy. Because we're talking about the intended parent's health insurance. So if you're an intended parent with health insurance, having coverage for infertility, that's where the whole making of the embryos and putting the embryos in a uterus comes in. And so it's the intended parent's insurance policy. The surrogate is the one who's getting pregnant. The insurance companies have concerns about how they're going to manage that, given that there's going to be a pregnancy and maternity care is excluded. And it was just, causing a lot of logistical issues. So ultimately what the bill ended up looking like and what it looks like right now and what it's likely to look like when it goes to the governor's desk is it's going to cover the getting the eggs and the sperm. And we all know that that's a difficult and expensive process, particularly with regards to getting the eggs. So that is covered by the bill. Two, mixing the eggs and the sperm together and making embryos and letting the embryos grow in the lab. That is also covered by the bill. What is not covered is that third piece, the final piece of taking the embryos and putting them into the uterus of a gestational carrier. So it's disappointing to us that we had to exclude that, but it was something that needed to be done as part of the negotiations process to come up with a bill that we have right now. So lots of good news for intended parents and surrogates. Not perfect, but anything we can do to help you guys with managing your expenses of what is a very expensive process. Generally, we tell people that it's about $130,000 to $150,000 process, the whole thing. Now, if some of that is covered, if the getting the eggs and sperm and making the embryos is covered, that's going to knock that price down. So anything we can do to help out intended parents, we want to do. So what is happening right now is that the bill was voted on by the full House and it passed 210, I think it was 210 to 147. Because of these changes that were made, that I just mentioned regarding surrogacy, the bill has got to go back to the full Senate and be voted on by the full Senate, and to make sure that we've got the same bill coming out of both the House and the Senate. And once that happens, there's some technical amendments that need to get done, and then it moves on to the governor's desk for what we hope is going to be his signature. So thank you for watching today. If you have any more questions, send them on in. We're happy to answer questions about this bill, about the Rhode Island legislation that's going on. Anything related to surrogacy you have a question on, send it in and we'll get back to you. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.